Anyway, welcome to my YouTube channel. Sick Reek is the name of it. Pretty much just uploading this kind of content because I used to just use my motorbike as a bit of me time, bit of cathartic time with my own thoughts, and that's what I usually do. And I think about what's going on and try to do a bit of problem solving in my own head in regards to what's really going on in life in general. But I figured some people might benefit from some of the thought processes and things I go over. So I figured I might as well just record some of it and hope someone gets a bit of benefit out of this stuff. Best case scenario, we can generate some interesting conversation around the topics we talk about. It's officially springtime in Australia now, so no more bad weather's allowed. There's a bit going on in the world these days. What isn't going on, you know? It seems like the world's on fire every day. Most recently there was a bit of protests going on in Australia over the weekend, the other day. It's very interesting because it seemed like the majority of, I don't know how many people there were officially, but I'd say around the entire of Australia there was probably about 100,000 people protesting at least. Possibly even more, I guess, if you factor in older cities and towns and stuff. But anyway, the news has wild claims up and down of those kind of numbers of who was protesting, so who the hell knows the total amount. But a lot of Aussies of all ethnicities and backgrounds showed up to apparently protest the rising cost of living, you know, the apparently incredibly high migration levels that Australia's been observing over the last year or so. I thought, you know, it's interesting to see so many people rock up to tell the government that they're not happy with what's going on in the country right now. But I was a little bit upset to see a lot of the mainstream media labelling them as racist extremists, and think regardless of how wild people's ideas are, it's good to let them be heard so that everyone can sort of ridicule their ideas and let them be critiqued by the public rather than continue to brew in silence on their own. I think if we can let everyone have a voice, let their arguments be heard, even as stupid as they are, we can at least say no, those ideas are bad or whatever, and come up with something better. I think in general most Aussies can relate that things are getting pretty expensive these days. The average cost of groceries is probably double from what it was at least 10 years ago, which is kind of crazy. Property is basically double what it was 5 years ago, which I just think is completely unsustainable. Like, how are people, like, it's basically just forcing people into more and more debt to be able to afford a place to live, or just paying exorbitant rent prices because they can't compete with the amount of people looking for rentals these days. And unfortunately, I think the problem is literally just down to lack of supply. There's not enough houses to go around, plain and simple, whether that mean, you know, there's too many unused houses, or not enough new developments being built, or too many new people coming in to house. It all compounds into, you know, making things not great for the taxpayer of this country. In regards to the migration stuff though, it seems like the government's been using migration as a tool to combat the economy going into a recession and continue economic growth, even though we're in a bit of a recession on paper. A lot of people aren't necessarily feeling the effects of it as though it was like a completely deep recession or depression. You know, that has other problems as well, like, you know, maybe putting a bit more strain on the housing market. You know, if we did stop or slow down migration, I think that would potentially be bad for the economy overall. You know, some people say it's going to be bloody apocalyptic, you know, no one's going to have a job, people are going to be protesting about not having a job instead of there being high migration. But realistically, at the moment, I don't know about the eastern states, but in WA there's still a huge surplus of jobs available for the amount of people we have. So I'd say it'd have to be a pretty significant downturn in economic growth to cause like people to be losing their jobs left, right and centre. It just might mean people can't be so picky with the work they do. or perhaps, you know, people that were in other industries go back to trades to build more houses. And it's a bit of a nuanced situation, but I don't think necessarily stopping immigration or let's get this right. Stopping means slowing down, because you can't put it to zero. That's kind of just unachievable. But if we did slow it down significantly, I don't necessarily think that would cause like the apocalypse that the Labor government seems to be claiming it would cause. On the other hand, though, we'll give Labor credit where it's due. I do believe they have made TAFE and free and other forms of education much more affordable. So the effects of that are yet to be seen, and I think that the true effects of that might not be seen for over a decade time, as more students find it easier to become educated, or essentially make it much easier for blue-collar workers to get their qualifications and enter the building industry, which is really apparently where we need a lot of workers, because we just need to be building more houses for the people that need houses here. There's not enough housing going around. I mean, that seems to be what's the talk of the town lately. I feel like people had a reason to protest. They all seem to be mostly law-abiding and well-mannered and calm. Obviously, there's a few nimwits that show up to any protest that want to cause trouble. And I thought it was laughable that, you know, people that thought they were neo-Nazis were going to be leading the protests. That's just ridiculous. The second those so-called neo-Nazis had a microphone, they were booed away, and police were asked to escort them away from the crowd or podium, because people were not having a bar of that shit. And I think people need to have a long, hard look at what a Nazi is, and look back at history during World War II, and they'll give you the definition of a real Nazi. And I think if anyone even had a potential shred of a thought that there was anything like that around these days in Australian culture, they would be fucking outed or labelled like a terrorist extremist group or something like that, and just be absolutely made redundant and non-existent, because I don't think anybody would willingly tolerate that kind of real hatred in society these days. That was pretty much the biggest thing that's happened in the last week. In other news though, well actually what can we do about the housing situation? Well, unless you're in government, you can't really do much. Realistically, we need to supply more housing and make it harder for people that don't live here to buy houses. I just think it's wrong that you can purchase property in this country without being a permanent resident or citizen, as far as I'm aware anyway. If the government can do that, that'll at least help a little bit. I think they might have already put measures in to slow that down. The best thing would to be turn that back and force the foreign investment to sell their property within like 5 to 10 years, or give them some sort of progressive deadline to start selling that and making all those properties available to Australians. That might mean that some people lose out or feel like they're losing out, and that their mortgages or their properties are worth less than what their mortgage is. But that would be a very extreme example. I think if it was done slow enough, it would just stabilise properties enough to essentially hold them stable for enough time for wage growth to potentially catch up. But then again, if wage growth catches up to the property demand, does that mean people are going to get themselves further and further into debt to own a property, and then, you know, property prices go up? Realistically, at the end of the day, I think the only solution is going to be having an increase in property supply, whether that be through getting rid of foreign investment and releasing those certain properties of a certain calibre back to the Australian people. You know, that could be done simply through forcing foreign investors that own like a median style house that the average Aussie would be buying to sell and diversify elsewhere with other investments. You know, they could probably potentially force them to buy commercial property instead, and that way that might bolster the economy in other ways by having a surplus of cheap commercial property for business use. I don't know, just an idea, but I haven't really thought that one through too well. But fact of the matter is, shit's got to change in this country. We've been in an absolute fucking shit state since COVID. We're still paying for the effects of COVID. essentially. Yeah, I don't like what's going on. I don't like that it's very hard for the average Aussie to get ahead these days. Don't really know what the government can do at the end of the day. They seem to be trying to make things better. The means at which they go about it are a bit haphazard, and I also don't like that people that were protesting, against the living conditions in Australia were sort of labelled in a negative context or essentially condemned by the current federal administration. It should be fine to protest whatever you want, but when people protest in like the tens of thousands for a war that's not even occurring in conflict that's not even occurring in your own country, then you're labelled as brave or whatever. I think we should just hold everyone to the same standard. Anyway, it's nice and quiet here this time of night. That's why I like coming for a ride through here at night. There's not many people around. I don't like to take the piss though. My bike is a bit loud, so I apologise for that, but I will try and keep it as quiet as possible. It's better to be heard on a motorcycle than not heard. Most people aren't really paying attention when they're driving these days. I love this city. Love the weather here. It's always pretty good. Even in the winter time you get a decent amount of sunshine. Anyway, let me know what you think about all that stuff. I'd love to hear some interesting arguments in the comment section. If any of that resonates with you, drop a comment and like and subscribe and all that BS, because I'll probably be uploading more stuff just because I have the free time to do it, and I don't know, I like getting my thoughts out, even if they do change rapidly based on my opinion of certain things. I think that is one thing people are a little bit too worried about these days, worried about their opinion. Like, I think it's fine to change your opinion. I don't think you have to act like it's your whole identity or whatever. Some new information could come out that changes your opinion or the way you feel about stuff, or something could happen to you in your life and suddenly you have a different view of how things work. So don't be scared about changing your opinion or saying that you're admitting you're happy to change the way you feel about something, because I think that takes more integrity than just standing by your beliefs blindly without any thought of logic or critical thinking whatsoever. What else has been going on lately? Apparently AI revolution is still in full swing, except AI is apparently not as good as it was meant to be anymore. With the new GPT-5 release, apparently it's been pretty lackluster compared to previous releases. Hasn't offered the performance leaps that people were expecting, which kind of says a lot, because I think big tech in the USA has been just dropping crap loads of money into AI recently, including building literal nuclear reactors around data centers to help bolster the steady flow of energy that they thought was going to be required for AI. Well, it turns out I think it requires way more energy than they were initially thinking. Nvidia's stock has dropped. Anyway, it'll be interesting to see what happens there. I mean, AI is still a powerful tool to use, I think, but I think for the average person who isn't really that into tech, they thought AI was going to be this magical tool that's going to save them, basically be God for them. It's only as good as the person using it in reality, and as good as the information you feed it and the information it's trained on. Sort of have to know to check the citations it gives you to make sure it's not leading you astray, giving you false information. One of the scariest things about AI though is old fake AI psychiatrists and friends and girlfriends and shit people have been talking to. I think they had a case over in the States or somewhere where he'd committed suicide and he was aided so by ChatGPT, and it like tried to act like a person or whatever, saying, oh, I'm here for you, whatever, and it's like, fucking no you're not, mate, you're fucking lines of code imitating a human. A lot of people don't really know that, and they think it's like some kind of actual intelligence. I don't quite think it's got there just yet. I think people are expecting it to be a super intelligence by now, but I think it's, as far as I'm aware, it's about as potentially good as like a pretty high IQ person, but I wouldn't necessarily call that a super intelligence. hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm sorry if I waffled on too long, and if you got something good out of what I'm posting, well, shoot a comment. I'll see if I can respond to it. In honesty, I'd just like to see some discussion about anything I said, because I'd really like to be open to improving these ideas and figuring out how we can do better as a society. I think that doesn't happen unless we have an honest and open discussion about things, and I'm not afraid to have an honest and open discussion about what's going on in the world. So until next time, I guess just enjoy the ride, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.